The Gardener and the Master. Far from the city stood an ancient house with thick walls, turrets, and pointed roofs. A wealthy noble family would reside there every summer, their most prized and beautiful property. Despite its ancient exterior suggesting recent construction, the interior was remarkably comfortable and tranquil. The family crest was carved on a stone above the door, surrounded by beautiful roses winding around the fanlight windows. In front of the house lay a neatly trimmed lawn adorned with red and white hawthorns alongside valuable flowers. The family employed a skilled gardener who took great pride in maintaining the flower beds, orchards, and vegetable gardens, much to everyone's delight. Part of the old garden remained unchanged, including the box hedges cut into the shapes of crowns and pyramids. Behind these hedges stood two solemn ancient trees, almost always bare, as if a storm had once flung debris onto their branches. But each piece of debris was actually a bird's nest. For ages, noisy crows and jackdaws had made their homes here, creating a veritable avian village. The birds were the true masters of this place, the oldest family and rightful owners of the house. They tolerated the two-legged creatures below, even though they occasionally shot at them, causing a flurry of frightened squawks. The gardener often suggested to the master that these old trees be cut down to improve the garden's appearance and possibly deter the noisy birds. However, the master refused to fell the trees or drive away the birds, as they were part of the house's ancient legacy and closely linked to it. "My dear Larson," the master would say, addressing the gardener by his name, "those trees are the birds' inherited legacy. Let them stay." "Larson, don't you have enough work with the entire flower garden, greenhouse, orchard, and vegetable garden? That should keep you busy." These were the areas of his dedicated work. He cared for them passionately and professionally, earning the master's recognition for his diligence. However, they also let him know that the flowers and fruits they saw and tasted in other people's gardens were superior to theirs. This saddened Larson deeply, as he always strived to do his best and put forth with great effort. He was a kind-hearted and conscientious worker. One day, the master called him over and said, gently yet seriously, that they had visited a renowned friend the day before. This friend had served them such fragrant and sweet apples and pears that all the guests praised them and were envious. Of course, these fruits were not locally produced, but if the climate allowed, efforts should be made to transplant them here to bear fruit. It was known that these fruits were bought from the city's best fruit shop, so the gardener should ride to the town to inquire where these apples and pears came from and try to obtain some cuttings for cultivation. The gardener was well acquainted with the fruit merchant, as the garden grew fruit trees, and he would sell the surplus to this merchant. Upon reaching the city, the gardener asked the fruit merchant about the origin of these delicious apples and pears. "They came from your garden," said the merchant, showing him the fruits. The gardener recognized them immediately. Delighted, he hurried back to inform the master that the apples and pears were their garden's produce. The master was skeptical. "Larson, that's impossible. Could you get a written confirmation from the fruit merchant?" Of course, he obtained a written confirmation. "This is unexpected," exclaimed the master in surprise. Their table was adorned daily with large dishes of their garden's delicious fruits. Sometimes, they even sent crates and barrels of these fruits to friends in and out of the city and even abroad. It was an enjoyable affair. The summers of the last 2 years had been particularly favorable for fruit growth. The harvest was good throughout the country. Sometime later, the master attended a banquet at the court, where they tasted sweet and fragrant watermelons grown in the royal greenhouse. The next day, the master called the gardener in. "My dear Larson, please speak to the royal gardener to get us some seeds of these delicious watermelons." "But the royal gardener's watermelons were requested from us," said the gardener, pleased. "Then the royal gardener must know the best method to cultivate the best watermelons," the master replied. "His watermelons are very delicious." "In that case, I must feel proud," said the gardener. "I can tell you, sir, that the royal gardener's watermelons were not very good last year. Seeing how well ours were growing and after tasting a few, he ordered 3 to be delivered to the palace." "Larson, do not think those were watermelons from our garden." "I have reasons," said the gardener. So, he obtained a document from the royal gardener, certifying that the watermelons on the noble family's table were from their garden. This was astonishing to the master. They did not keep it a secret. They showed the document to everyone and distributed watermelon seeds far and wide, just as they had done with cuttings before. Later, they heard that these cuttings had thrived exceedingly well, bearing delicious fruits, and were even named after their garden. This name can now be found in English, German, and French. This was something no one had expected. "We just hope the gardener doesn't get too full of himself," the master said. However, the gardener had a different view. He wanted everyone to know his name, the best gardener in the country. Every year, he tried to create something delicious in horticulture, and he did. Yet, he often heard people say that the first batch of fruits he cultivated, such as apples and pears, were the best, but later varieties were far inferior. The watermelons were truly excellent, but that was a different matter. The strawberries were said to be delicious, but not much better than those from other gardens. One year, He failed with radishes, and people only talked about those unlucky radishes without mentioning the other good things. It seemed that the master felt quite comfortable when saying, "My dear Larson, luck hasn't been on your side this year." They seemed to find it pleasant to say, "Luck hasn't been on your side this year." The gardener changed the fresh flowers in each room twice a week. He arranged them with great artistic flair, making their colors complement each other and enhance their vibrancy. "Larson, you understand art," the master said. "This is a talent given to you by God, not something inherent in you." One day, the gardener came in with a large crystal cup that floated a water lily leaf. A vibrant blue flower resembling a sunflower bloomed on the leaf with a thick, long stem immersed in water. "The lotus of India," exclaimed the master in amazement. They had never seen such a flower before. It was placed in sunlight during the day and received artificial sunlight at night. Everyone who saw it thought it extraordinarily beautiful and precious, even the country's most noble, intelligent, and kind princess. The master honored her by giving her the flower, which went with her to the palace. The master wanted to personally pick a similar flower from the garden if he could find one. But he couldn't find it, so he called the gardener to ask where he got the blue lotus. "We couldn't find it anywhere," the master said. "We've been to the greenhouse, every corner of the garden." "Oh, you certainly wouldn't find it in those places," said the gardener. "It's a common flower from the vegetable garden. But honestly, isn't it beautiful? It looks like a cactus, but actually, it's just a flower from an artichoke." "You should have told us the truth earlier," the master said. "We thought it was a rare foreign flower. You've made a big joke of us in front of the princess." She saw the flower and found it very beautiful but did not recognize it. She studied botany, but science and vegetables don't connect. "Larson, how could you think of bringing this flower into the room? We've now become a laughingstock." So, the beautiful blue flower picked from the vegetable garden was removed from the living room, as it wasn't a flower for the living room. The master apologized to the princess and explained it was just a vegetable flower, whimsically presented by the gardener, for which he had sternly reprimanded the gardener. "That was wrong," said the princess. "He made us open our eyes to see a beautiful flower we never noticed. He showed us beauty we couldn't imagine." She ordered that the royal garden's gardener bring one to her room every day when the artichokes flowered. This was arranged accordingly. The master told the gardener he could continue to bring fresh artichokes into the room. "That truly is a beautiful flower," both the master and mistress said unanimously. "Extremely precious." The gardener received praise. "Larson likes this sort of recognition," said the master. "He's really like a spoiled child." In the autumn, a terrible storm arose one day. The storm was so fierce that it uprooted many trees by the edge of the forest overnight. What saddened the master but pleased the gardener was the toppling of the 2 large trees filled with bird nests. The crows and sparrows could be heard wailing in the storm. It was said they even flapped their wings against the windows. "Larson, you must be pleased now," said the master. "The storm has fallen the trees, the birds have moved to the forest, the ancient relics are all gone, all traces and memories vanished. We are very saddened." The gardener said nothing, but he was already planning what he had long wanted to do with the beautiful, sunny land he had previously been unable to use. He intended to make it the pride of the garden and the joy of the master. When the large trees fell, they destroyed all the patterns made by the old boxwood hedges. Here, the gardener planted a dense array of plants, all native to the fields and forests of the region. What other gardeners deemed unsuitable for planting in abundance in a mansion's garden, he cultivated. He planted each species in its appropriate soil, placing them in shaded areas or spots blessed with sunlight according to each plant's unique requirements. He nurtured them with deep affection, and so they thrived. Junipers, transplanted from the wastelands of Jutland, grew indistinguishable in shape and color from Italian cypresses. The smooth, prickly holly remained vibrantly green, whether in the cold of winter or the heat of summer. Foremost were various species of ferns. Some resembled the offspring of palm trees, others the progeny of the delicate plant known as Venus's hair. Even the often scorned burdock was so fresh and beautiful that it could easily be included in bouquets. Burdocks were planted in the dry highlands, while coltsfoot thrived in the moist lowlands. Although dismissed by many, its slender stems and broad leaves lent it an elegant air. The tall mullein, with its layers of blossoms, stood proudly like a candelabra with many branches. There were also cornflowers, poppies, daffodils, wild calla lilies, and the beautiful, three-leaved wood sorrel. They were very beautiful. Little pear trees, transplanted from French soil and supported by iron frames, were lined up in front. They received ample sunlight and care and soon bore juicy, large fruits as if they were native to this land. In the spot where the 2 ancient trees once stood, a tall flagpole now rose, bearing the Danish flag. Beside it was another pole that, in summer and the harvest season, was adorned with vines of hops and their fragrant clusters of flowers. But in winter, following an ancient tradition, it held a sheaf of oats, offering birds a feast during the joyful Christmas season. Larson becomes more sentimental with age, the master said. But his dedication and loyalty to us are genuine. During New Year's, A magazine in the city featured an illustration of the ancient house. The drawing depicted the flagpole, and the bundle of oats hung up for the joyous Christmas feast of the sparrows. The magazine noted that honoring an old tradition is commendable, especially fitting for such a venerable house. "This is all Larsen's doing," the master remarked. "He's receiving all the praise. Such a fortunate man he is. And we almost feel proud to have him." Yet, they weren't truly proud. They remembered they were the masters, with the power to dismiss Larsen at any moment. But they never did, for they were kind-hearted, and their kind has many among them who are good. This, too, was a stroke of luck for someone like Larsen. Yes, that's the tale of the gardener and the master. On this peaceful night, may all beautiful dreams surround you, cradling you into a night of good sleep. Good night.